Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to explore something we all live inside, but rarely really dissect the nature of reality itself. So the big question we're tackling is this. Is reality just out there, fixed, waiting for us to discover it? Or is it something more fluid, something we actively, create together through our interactions?
That's a fascinating starting point. It really challenges how we think about, everything.
Exactly. And we're diving into this using a specific framework. The Cognosystemic theory of human psychosocial relational construction, which is quite a mouthful, so we'll call it TCCR. It's a unified theory proposed for social work by Jelena Simonovic, but honestly, its core ideas about reality touch everyone. Our mission today is really to untack its foundations, how TCCR sees human experience and psychosocial reality as fundamentally relational.
Co-constructed.
Built together, essentially. Precisely. How our shared stories, our connections, literally weave the fabric of the world we perceive. Okay, so let's jump into the first big idea from TCCR. It argues that psychosocial reality isn't purely objective. It's not just out there, independent of us. And it's also not just individual, like a private dream inside each person's head. So if it's neither of those, what is it?
Right. And this is where TCCR gets really interesting. It posits that psychosocial reality is, quote, co-constructed between subjects through shared narratives. So think of it less like finding a map and more like collaboratively drawing one as we go. This reality emerges from this constant back and forth, this dynamic interplay between, on one hand, the human mind, our thoughts, feelings, cognition, emotion.
Okay, the internal stuff.
Yes. And on the other hand, society, which includes language, culture, all those relationships we have.
Got it. Mind and society interacting.
Exactly. Now, it's really important to be clear here. TCCR isn't saying the physical world doesn't exist. The chair you're sitting on is still solid.
Like gravity still works.
Precisely. It acknowledges what it calls a material substrate.
Right.
But, and this is key, it argues that our psychosocial reality isn't reduced to just that physical stuff. This lines up quite closely with ideas from social constructivism.
Yeah.
The basic idea there is that our social world, even how we understand knowledge itself, isn't just given, it's built.
Built through interaction.
Built through our shared interactions, our shared narratives. Thinkers like Berger and Luckman argue that even very basic concepts we often take as objective fact, like time, space, cause and effect, even matter itself, are actually products of social agreement, social processes, how we learn together to see the world.
Wow. That really makes you pause. I mean, think about something like justice. Is there one single universal definition? Or is our understanding of it shaped entirely by the stories, the laws, the cultural agreements we've built up over time? Same with money, right? Just paper, but we agree it has value.
Exactly. It highlights the power of these collective narratives.
Okay, so if reality is co-constructed like this, it seems like relationships must be absolutely fundamental. How does TCCR define this relationality? What does that term really capture?
Relationality is absolutely central in TCCR. It's defined not just as people connecting, but as the dynamic web of connections between subjects. And crucially, this web isn't just a passive background. It's the very place, the crucible, you might say, where things like meanings, our identities, our emotions, even social structures emerge. They come into being within that web.
So it's generative.
Very much so. And this is a deliberate move away from a purely individualistic perspective where you focus just on the single person. TCCR says, no, you have to put relationality right at the heart of social analysis. And intervention, too.
That makes sense.
It even echoes the root of the word social. It comes from the Latin socius, meaning companion or ally. It suggests this idea of accompaniment, belonging, a kind of collaborative bond. This reinforces TCCR's view that humans are fundamentally, inherently social beings. Our identity, our sense of well-being, they're intrinsically tied to our relationships and our social context.
So who we are is inseparable from who we are with.
In a very deep sense, yes. Yeah. How we perceive ourselves, how we manage our relationships, it's all shaped by these shared interactions and the meanings we build together within society.
Okay, this is fascinating. If we follow this thread, if meaning and identity emerge from relationships, from this web, it suggests meaning isn't just something inside my head, it's created between us. Can you elaborate on how TCCR understands this intersubjectivity?
Yes, absolutely. This is a cornerstone. Drawing inspiration from Alfred Schutz's social phenomenology and also from social constructionism, TCCR maintains that meaning emerges between subjects, not within them. So intersubjectivity is that crucial space, that shared ground where our individual private experiences get transformed into shared realities. And how does that happen? Through narrative, through telling stories.
Through communication.
Through communication, yes. And this transformation works because we develop collectively a set of shared knowledge and interpretative schemes. Think of it as a shared toolkit for making sense of the world together.
That makes me think of, say, a big public event. Initially, everyone might have their own slightly different take on it, but then through talking about it, reading news, seeing social media, a kind of common understanding, a dominant narrative starts to form. That's intersubjectivity in action.
Precisely that. It's where individual viewpoints converge, negotiate, and eventually crystallize into a shared meaning, a shared reality about that event. It's a dynamic process.
Okay, so we've got the mind, our internal world, and society, the relational web. But what about the physical environment, the stuff around us? How does TCCR account for matter?
Right, that's the third piece. TCCR proposes what it calls a psychosocial-material approach. It sees reality as constructed through the interplay of three key pillars. First, the human mind, as we discussed, perceptions, emotions, evaluations. Second, society, the symbolic structures, norms, discourses, relationships, that whole web. And third, matter. This represents the material conditions, the physical environment, our bodies, technology, resources.
So it's bringing the physical back in.
Yes, but with a crucial distinction. Matter influences our psychosocial reality, but it doesn't solely determine it. Think about it. Living in poverty, that's a material condition, absolutely shapes experiences and possibilities. But how that poverty is understood, narrated, and responded to, is it seen as a personal failing, a systemic issue, a temporary setback? That's constructed psychosociomaterially.
So the meaning attached to the material conditions is key.
Exactly. The meaning arises from the interaction of mind, society, and matter. However, while TCCR acknowledges all three, it strategically focuses its lens, particularly for social work application, on the psychosocial intersection. That's seen as the primary arena for intervention because it's where subjective experience and social relationships most directly connect and influence each other. It's where change often needs to happen.
That makes practical sense. So if reality is co-constructed, relational, intersubjective, and influenced but not dictated by matter, what's the actual medium for all this construction? How does it happen?
The answer, according to TCCR, is fundamentally narrative. Stories. The theory emphasizes that psychosocial reality is narrated, interpreted, and contested across multiple levels and layers. It's not just a collection of facts. It's organized into narrative systems that guide action and structure the lived world.
We live in and through stories.
Essentially, yes. Jerome Giener, the psychologist, put it beautifully. He said something like, people do not merely live their experiences. They organize them into stories that give shape and meaning to their existence. End way. And importantly, these narratives aren't just passive reflections. Bruner stressed they actively shape how we experience and understand the world. The story you tell yourself about a challenge changes how you feel about it and what you do next.
That reminds me of Yuval Noah Harari's point about fiction being humanity's superpower. Things like money, nations, laws. They work because millions, even billions of people believe in the same story about them. Allows for incredible cooperation based on shared narrative.
Absolutely. Money is a perfect example. Its power comes entirely from the shared story we tell about its value. And TCCR actually gets quite specific about these narratives. It talks about Cognosystemic narrative systems. These aren't just loose stories. They have identifiable structures. TCCR outlines 8 interrelated elements within these systems. Things like the raw experience itself, our initial perceptions and emotions, the surrounding context, the core message or propositional content, how we evaluate that content, our belief or epistemic attitude towards it, the story's purpose, and its actual function in guiding behavior.
Wow, that's quite detailed.
It is. And it even proposes that these narrative systems have a kind of life cycle. They emerge, they develop, they mature, they might decline or transform, and sometimes they're even renewed or replaced. It shows how our shared understandings are constantly in flux.
Okay, let's bring this down to earth. We've gone deep into the theory of reality as co-constructed relational narrative. What does all this mean for a practical field like social work? What are the real-world implications?
Well, the implications are quite profound. This perspective really compels a rethinking of social work. It pushes it towards becoming understood primarily as a relational and narrative discipline. So the focus shifts. Instead of just looking at an individual's problem or their environment in isolation, the focus moves towards understanding and transforming the webs of meaning, the narratives that actually sustain those social problems.
So it's about changing the story.
In a significant way, yes. It means that interventions shouldn't just start with assessing individual deficits or external factors alone. They must begin with a deep reading of human relationships and the narratives that organize them. You need to understand how the client, their family, maybe their community is making sense of their situation through stories. What narratives are empowering? Which ones are limiting? Ultimately, the goal of TCCR is to give social work a proprietary theoretical structure, something robust from within the discipline itself. This helps move beyond borrowing concepts and builds a more coherent, transformative paradigm for practice, one that is thoroughly relational, narrative, and systemic.
Right. So wrapping up this deep dive into TCCR's foundations, the core takeaway seems to be this really powerful idea. Our reality isn't just handed to us. It's this dynamic, ongoing co-creation, something built moment by moment in the interplay between our individual minds and the collective stories, the shared narratives of our society. It's alive.
Precisely. And grasping that is so fundamental. The theory puts it starkly. Within the TCCR, there is no subject without relationship and no reality without shared meaning. Full stop. Understanding that isn't just academic. It's essential for building social work practice that is genuinely ethical, coherent, and ultimately transformative. It changes how you see and engage with people and their situations.
It certainly gives you a lot to think about. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener. How might really grasping the narrative nature of your own life, the stories you tell yourself, the collective stories swirling around you, how might that change how you see your own ability to act, to create change in your world?